The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Buckingham Palace. Kate Middleton walked slowly through the grand hallways, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She had been living this royal life for years now, but today felt different. Today, everything was about to change. Kate's hands trembled slightly as she held the morning newspapers. The headlines were brutal. "Kate's fashion disaster," screamed one tabloid. "Duchess fails again," declared another, but the worst one made her stomach turn. "Is Kate really fit to be queen?" The words cut deep into her heart. She had tried so hard to be perfect. Every public appearance, every charity event, every smile for the cameras, all carefully planned and executed. But somehow, nothing seemed good enough for the press or for certain members of the royal family. As Kate turned the corner near the breakfast room, she heard raised voices coming from inside. She recognized them immediately. King Charles and Queen Camilla were having another heated discussion. Kate paused, not wanting to interrupt, but the conversation was getting louder. "She's not ready, Charles." Camilla's voice was sharp and cutting. "She'll never be ready. Look at these newspapers. She's embarrassing the entire royal family." Kate's heart sank. They were talking about her. She pressed herself against the wall, hidden from view but close enough to hear every painful word. "The girl tries." "I'll give her that," Camilla continued, her tone dripping with condescension. "But trying isn't enough. This is the royal family, not some village charity event. We need someone with real class, real breeding, someone who understands what it means to be royal." King Charles's voice was quieter, but Kate could still make out his words. "Camilla, please. Kate is family now. She's William's wife, and she's trying her best." "Her best?" Camilla's laugh was cold and bitter. "Her best got us these headlines. Her best has the entire country questioning whether she's suitable to be the future queen. Charles, you need to face reality. She's not one of us, and she never will be." Kate felt tears forming in her eyes. She had known that Camilla didn't particularly like her, but hearing it said so bluntly was devastating. All the years of trying to fit in, all the effort to learn royal protocols, all the sacrifices she had made, none of it seemed to matter. "Think about the monarchy's reputation," Camilla pressed on. "Think about our legacy. Do you really want history to remember us as the generation that let standards slip? That allowed someone so ordinary to wear the crown?" The word ordinary hit Kate like a physical blow. She had always been proud of her middle-class background, but in this world, it seemed to be her greatest weakness. "I've been patient, Charles." Camilla's voice was rising again. "I've tried to help her, to guide her, but she just doesn't get it. She doesn't understand the weight of responsibility that comes with this position. She's too soft, too emotional, too common." 23. Kate couldn't listen anymore. She turned to leave, but her movement caused her phone to slip from her trembling hands. It clattered loudly against the marble floor, echoing through the hallway. The voices in the breakfast room stopped immediately. "What was that?" Camilla asked. Kate quickly picked up her phone and tried to walk away quietly, but it was too late. The breakfast room door opened, and King Charles stepped out. His eyes met Kate's, and she saw the recognition in them. He knew she had heard everything. "Kate," he said softly, his voice filled with something that might have been regret. But Kate couldn't face him right now. She couldn't face either of them. Without a word, she turned and practically ran down the hallway, her heels clicking rapidly against the floor. Behind her, she heard Camilla's voice again, louder now and clearly intended for Kate to hear. Well, I suppose she heard the truth. Maybe now she'll understand that this life isn't for everyone. Kate made it to her private quarters before the tears really started flowing. She locked the door behind her and collapsed into a chair by the window. The beautiful gardens of Buckingham Palace spread out before her, but she couldn't see their beauty through her tears. She thought about William, her husband, who was currently away on royal duties. He had always supported her, always told her she was perfect, just the way she was, but William wasn't here now. and Kate felt more alone than she ever had in her life. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her sister Pippa. "Saw the newspapers. Are you okay? You know none of that rubbish is true, right?" Kate wanted to respond, wanted to reach out for support, but she couldn't find the words. How could she explain that the real hurt wasn't coming from the newspapers, but from within her own family? She stood up and walked to her dresser, where she kept a small jewelry box. Inside was her engagement ring from William. The same ring that had belonged to Princess Diana. She picked it up and held it to the light, watching the sapphire sparkle. Diana had faced similar criticism, similar challenges. But Diana had been born into aristocracy. She had understood this world in a way that Kate never would. Maybe Camilla was right. Maybe Kate really wasn't cut out for this life. A soft knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Kate?" It was King Charles's voice, gentle and concerned. "May I come in?" Kate quickly wiped her tears and put the ring back in its box. "Just a moment," she called out, trying to make her voice sound normal. She checked her appearance in the mirror, fixing her hair and attempting to hide the evidence of her crying. Then she opened the door. King Charles stood in the hallway, his expression serious but kind. He was alone. Camilla was nowhere to be seen. "We need to talk," he said simply. Kate nodded and stepped aside to let him enter. She closed the door behind him and gestured for him to sit in one of the armchairs by the window. Charles sat down, but Kate remained standing. She couldn't quite bring herself to get comfortable, not after what she had heard. "I know you heard our conversation," Charles said directly. "I could see it in your face." Kate looked down at her hands. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I was just walking by." "I know," Charles said. "And I'm sorry you had to hear that. I'm sorry for all of it." "Are they true?" Kate asked quietly. "The things Camilla said? Am I really not fit for this role?" "Am I?" Kate asked Camilla. "Am I really not fit for this role?" Charles was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful and measured. "Kate, when I married Camilla, I thought I knew what the royal family needed. I thought we needed people who understood tradition, who had been raised in this world. But I've learned something over the years." He paused, looking out at the gardens. "Being royal isn't about being born into the right family or having the perfect breeding. It's about serving others, about caring for people, about representing the best of what humanity can be. And in those areas, Kate, you excel." Kate looked up at him, surprised by his words. "I've watched you with the children at the hospitals you visit," Charles continued. "I've seen you comfort grieving families, support charitable causes, and bring genuine warmth to every room you enter. That's not something that can be taught or bred. That's something you either have or you don't. And you have it in abundance." "But the newspapers," Kate started. "The newspapers write what sells," Charles interrupted. "They don't write about the hundreds of people whose lives you've touched, the charities you've helped, the positive changes you've brought to the royal family. They write about fashion choices and perceived missteps because controversy sells papers." Kate felt a small spark of hope, but the pain of Camilla's words was still fresh. "Camilla thinks I'm ordinary." Charles stood up and walked to the window. "Kate, may I tell you something about my mother?" Kate nodded, curious despite her emotional state. Queen Elizabeth II was criticized early in her reign too. People said she was too young, too inexperienced, too emotional. They said she would never live up to her father's legacy, but she proved them all wrong. Not by being perfect, but by being genuine. By caring deeply about her duty and her people. He turned back to face Kate. "You remind me of her in many ways. Not because you're the same person, but because you both understand that being royal is about service, not superiority." Kate felt tears forming again. But these were different tears. Tears of gratitude rather than hurt. "Camilla has her own insecurities," Charles said gently. "She's spent years trying to prove that she belongs in this family. And sometimes, that makes her overly critical of others. It doesn't excuse what she said, but it might help you understand it." "What should I do?" Kate asked. I feel so lost right now. Charles walked over and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You should remember who you are and why William chose you. You should remember all the good you've done and all the people you've helped. And most importantly, you should remember that being true to yourself is more valuable than being perfect for others. Just then, there was another knock on the door. This time it was more urgent, almost frantic. Charles? Charles? Are you in there? It was Camilla's voice, and she sounded upset. Charles and Kate exchanged glances. Charles walked to the door and opened it. Camilla stood in the hallway, her face flushed and her breathing rapid. Charles, thank goodness I found you. We have a problem. A big problem. What's wrong? Charles asked. Camilla's eyes flicked to Kate, and for a moment, she seemed hesitant to speak in front of her. But whatever news she had was too urgent to wait. It's the press, Camilla said. They've gotten hold of some information about our conversation this morning. Someone heard us talking about Kate, and now they're threatening to publish everything. Kate felt the blood drain from her face. If the newspapers published details of what Camilla had said about her, it would create a scandal that could damage the royal family's reputation for years. How is that possible? Charles asked. We were in a private room. I don't know, Camilla said, her voice rising with panic. Maybe a staff member overheard. Maybe someone recorded it somehow. But they have quotes, Charles. Direct quotes of everything I said. Kate watched as the reality of the situation sank in for all of them. This wasn't just about hurt feelings anymore. This was about the future of the monarchy itself. What do they want? Charles asked. They want a response, Camilla said. They want to know if the quotes are accurate, and they want to know what the royal family's official position is on Kate's suitability as future queen. The room fell silent. Kate realized that, in a matter of hours, her private pain would become public knowledge. The whole world would know that her own family questioned whether she was good enough. There has to be something we can do, Charles said, his mind clearly racing through options. The story goes live in 2 hours, Camilla said. They're giving us until then to provide a comment or response. Kate found her voice. Maybe this is for the best, she said quietly. Both Charles and Camilla turned to look at her. Maybe it's time for the truth to come out, Kate continued. Maybe people should know that I'm not perfect, that I struggle with this role, that even my own family has doubts about me. Kate? No, Charles said firmly. That's not the truth. That's just one conversation. One moment of frustration. It doesn't represent how I feel about you, and it certainly doesn't represent your worth or your capabilities. But even as Charles spoke, Kate could see the wheels turning in Camilla's head. She could almost hear her thinking that maybe this crisis was the perfect opportunity to push Kate out of the royal family once and for all. The next 2 hours would determine not just Kate's future, but the future of the entire royal family. And as Kate looked at the two people standing in her room, she realized that she was about to discover who would stand with her when everything fell apart. The press conference room at Buckingham Palace had never felt more intimidating. Rows of journalists filled every seat, their cameras and recording devices pointed toward the podium where King Charles would soon stand. The air buzzed with anticipation and the low murmur of reporters discussing the bombshell story that was about to break. Kate sat in a small side room, watching the scene through a crack in the door. Her hands were shaking as she held a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. In just 30 minutes, Charles would face the press and address the leaked conversation. What he said would either destroy her reputation forever or somehow salvage what was left of her dignity. You don't have to watch this, said Margaret, Kate's longtime lady-in-waiting, and one of the few people who truly understood what she was going through. I need to, Kate replied softly. Whatever happens, I need to see it. Down the hallway, Charles was in his private office making final preparations. The last 2 hours had been a whirlwind of emergency meetings, phone calls, and desperate strategizing. The palace's communications team had worked frantically to craft a response, but Charles had ultimately decided to handle this personally. Camilla paced back and forth in the office, her anxiety evident in every step. Charles, please reconsider. We can still frame this differently. We can say the conversation was taken out of context, that the quotes were misrepresented. Charles looked up from the notes he was reviewing. Camilla, I heard what you said. Kate heard what you said. We cannot and will not lie about it. But think about what this will do to the monarchy, Camilla pressed. If you defend her too strongly, people will think you're weak. If you admit that there are concerns about her suitability, it will damage her irreparably. There's no winning scenario here. There's always a winning scenario when you choose to tell the truth, Charles said firmly. I've learned that lesson the hard way over the years. A knock on the door interrupted them. It was William, who had rushed back from his royal engagement the moment he heard about the crisis. Father, William said as he entered, his face a mask of controlled anger. I need to know exactly what happened. Charles gestured for his son to sit down. Your wife overheard a private conversation between Camilla and me this morning. Some of the things that were said were unkind. And now, those words have somehow made it to the press. William turned to look at Camilla, his eyes cold. What exactly did you say about my wife? Camilla stopped pacing and faced William. For a moment, she seemed to consider deflecting or minimizing her words. But the intensity of William's stare made it clear that wouldn't work. I expressed concerns about Kate's readiness for her future role, Camilla said carefully. I may have been more direct than I should have been. More direct how? William's voice was deadly quiet. Charles intervened. Son, what matters now is not what was said, but how we move forward. The press conference starts in 15 minutes. No, William said, standing up. What matters is that my wife, the mother of my children, the woman I love, was attacked in her own home by someone who should be supporting her. What matters is that Kate is probably sitting somewhere right now, wondering if her own family thinks she's a failure. He turned back to Camilla. You want to talk about being royal? About understanding what it means to serve? Kate has dedicated her life to this family and this country. She's raised our future king while maintaining a full schedule of royal duties. She's brought more positive attention to the monarchy than we've had in decades. And you think she's not good enough? Camilla's composure finally cracked. I was trying to protect the institution, William. I was trying to think about the long-term reputation of the royal family. By tearing down one of its most valuable members, William shot back. By making her feel unwelcome and inadequate? That's not protection, Camilla. That's sabotage. Charles stood up as well. Both of you, enough. We need to focus on the situation at hand. William, where is Kate now? She's watching from the side room, William said. She insisted on being here, even though I told her she didn't have to put herself through this. That's Kate, Charles said with a small, sad smile. Always facing problems head-on, even when it hurts. A communications aide appeared in the doorway. Your Majesty, it's time. Charles nodded and picked up his notes. As he headed for the door, Camilla grabbed his arm. Charles, please, she said urgently. Whatever you're planning to say, think about the consequences. Think about us. Charles gently removed her hand from his arm. I am thinking about us, Camilla. All of us. Including Kate. As Charles walked toward the press conference room, he passed the side room where Kate was waiting. He paused and knocked softly on the door. Come in, Kate called. Charles entered to find Kate standing by the window, looking out at the gardens. William was beside her, his arm around her shoulders. Kate, Charles said, I want you to know that whatever I say out there, it comes from the heart. You are my daughter-in-law, you are family, and you deserve better than what happened this morning. Kate turned to face him, her eyes red from crying but her expression determined. Thank you, she said simply. Whatever happens, I'm grateful that you're willing to stand up for me. Charles nodded and was about to leave when Kate spoke again. Charles, wait, there's something I need to say. She took a deep breath. I know I'm not perfect. I know I make mistakes. And I know I don't have the background that some people think I should have, but I love this family, and I love this country. I've given everything I have to this role, and I'll continue to do so regardless of what anyone thinks. I know you will, Charles said warmly. And that's exactly what makes you perfect for this role. As Charles left for the press conference, Kate and William watched from the side room. The room fell silent as Charles approached the podium. "Good afternoon," Charles began, his voice steady and authoritative. "I've called this press conference to address certain reports that are circulating about a private conversation that took place this morning at Buckingham Palace." The journalists leaned forward, their pens poised and cameras rolling. "It is true," Charles continued, "that Queen Camilla and I had a discussion about various matters concerning the royal family. It is also true that some of the things said in that conversation were overheard and have now been reported to the press." He paused, looking directly into the cameras. "I want to be absolutely clear about something. The Duchess of Cambridge, my daughter-in-law Kate, is one of the finest people I have ever known. She has brought nothing but honor, dignity, and genuine warmth to the royal family. Any suggestion that she is unsuitable for her role or unworthy of her position is categorically false." Kate felt William squeeze her hand as Charles continued. "Yes, we had concerns discussed in our conversation this morning, but those concerns were not about Kate's character, her dedication, or her suitability as future queen. Those concerns were about the relentless scrutiny and unfair criticism she faces from certain quarters of the media and, regrettably, from some within our own circle." The room erupted with questions from reporters, but Charles held up his hand for silence. "I want to address something that I believe has been lost in all the noise and speculation. Kate Middleton came into this family as a commoner, and that is precisely why she is so effective in her role. She understands what it's like to live outside palace walls. She connects with people in a way that only someone who has experienced real life can do." He looked directly at one of the cameras, as if speaking directly to Kate. "She has never asked for special treatment. She has never complained about the pressures or the criticism. She has simply done her job with grace, compassion, and unwavering commitment. And for that, she deserves our respect and our support, not our criticism." In the side room, Kate was crying again, but these were tears of relief and gratitude. Charles wasn't finished. "I want to make something else perfectly clear. Any member of this family, any member of our staff, or any person in our circle who cannot treat the Duchess of Cambridge with the respect she deserves will find themselves re-evaluating their position." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Charles was drawing a line in the sand. The monarchy survives and thrives because it adapts, because it welcomes people who bring new perspectives and fresh energy. Kate has brought both of those things in abundance. She has also brought something else that is invaluable. She has brought normalcy to our children's lives, while still teaching them the importance of duty and service. A journalist called out a question about Camilla's specific comments, but Charles ignored it. "I will not be taking questions about the details of private conversations," Charles said firmly. "What I will say is this. If you want to judge the Duchess of Cambridge, judge her by her actions. Judge her by the countless hours she spends supporting charitable causes. Judge her by the genuine care she shows for people she meets. Judge her by the way she has raised my grandchildren to be kind, compassionate, and grounded individuals." He paused again, and when he spoke, his voice was filled with emotion. "Judge her by the fact that she could have walked away from this life at any point when the pressure became too much, but she chose to stay because she believes in service above self. That, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly the kind of person we need representing the British monarchy." The room was completely silent now. Charles had effectively turned the narrative completely around. Instead of defending Kate against criticism, he was presenting her as the ideal royal. "One final point," Charles said. "The royal family is not a perfect institution, and we are not perfect people. We make mistakes, we have disagreements, and we sometimes say things we regret, but we are united in our commitment to serving the British people, and we are united in our support for each other." He looked directly into the main camera again. "Kate, if you're watching this, I want you to know that you have my complete confidence and support. You are not just suitable for your future role as queen, you are ideal for it." With that, Charles stepped away from the podium and walked out of the room, ignoring the shouted questions from reporters. In the side room, Kate collapsed into William's arms, overwhelmed by emotion. Margaret handed her tissues, while William held her tightly. "He did it," William whispered. "He actually did it." But even as relief flooded through Kate, she knew this was far from over. Charles had publicly defended her, and essentially issued an ultimatum to anyone who wanted to challenge her position. But Camilla was still out there, and Kate doubted that the Queen would take this public rebuke quietly. As if summoned by Kate's thoughts, the door burst open and Camilla stormed in, her face flushed with anger. "Are you happy now?" Camilla demanded, pointing at Kate. "Are you satisfied? Do you have any idea what Charles has just done? He's made me look like a villain in front of the entire world." William stepped protectively in front of Kate. "Stepmother, I suggest you calm down and think very carefully about your next words." But Camilla was beyond caring about diplomacy. "This is exactly what I was talking about this morning. This is exactly the kind of drama and chaos that follows her everywhere she goes. A real royal would have handled this quietly, privately. But no, she had to make it into a public spectacle." "I didn't leak anything to the press," Kate said quietly, finally finding her voice. "I never wanted any of this to become public." "But you didn't stop it either, did you?" Camilla shot back. "You let Charles throw me under the bus to protect you. You let him damage his own marriage to save your reputation." The accusation hit Kate like a physical blow. Was that what she had done? Had she allowed Charles to sacrifice his relationship with Camilla for her sake? "That's enough," William said firmly. "Father made his own choice about how to handle this situation. Kate didn't force him to do anything, didn't she?" Camilla's voice was rising to a near scream now. "She's been playing the victim from the moment she walked into this family. Poor Kate, so misunderstood. Poor Kate, so criticized. Poor Kate, not appreciated for all her sacrifices." Margaret moved toward the door, clearly uncomfortable with the scene unfolding before her. "Well, let me tell you something about sacrifice," Camilla continued, her voice now a full shout. "I sacrificed decades of my life waiting for Charles. I sacrificed my reputation, my relationships, my peace of mind. I earned my place in this family through years of struggle and criticism. And now some middle-class girl who married into money thinks she deserves the same respect that I fought for?" Kate felt each word like a dagger. Despite Charles's public support, despite William's love, the pain of Camilla's hatred was overwhelming. "You will never be queen material," Camilla screamed, completely losing control now. "Never. You don't have the breeding, you don't have the strength, and you certainly don't have the backbone to handle what's coming. The first real crisis that hits this monarchy, and you'll crumble like a house of cards." Her voice reached a crescendo that echoed through the palace corridors. "You're nothing but a pretty face with a nice smile. And eventually, everyone will see that." The room fell silent after Camilla's outburst. Kate stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. William looked shocked by the venom in his stepmother's words. Even Margaret, who had seen many royal family disputes over the years, looked stunned. Slowly, Camilla seemed to realize what she had done. Her face went pale as she looked around the room at the faces, staring back at her. I didn't mean," she started to say, but the damage was done. And as if the universe itself was responding to the ugliness that had just been unleashed, Camilla's screams began to fade into an eerie silence that seemed to swallow the room whole. The silence stretched on, broken only by the sound of Kate's quiet crying and the distant noise of reporters outside, unaware that the real story was just beginning. The silence that followed Camilla's outburst was unlike anything Kate had ever experienced. It wasn't just quiet. It was as if the very air in the room had been sucked away, leaving behind something heavy and suffocating. Even the sounds from outside seemed muffled, as though the palace itself was holding its breath. Camilla stood frozen in the middle of the room, her face pale and her breathing shallow. The reality of what she had just said, and who might have heard it, was clearly sinking in. Her eyes darted to the door, which she had left wide open in her rage. William was the first to move. He walked to the door and looked out into the hallway. What he saw made his expression darken even further. "Father's here," he said quietly. "And so are several palace staff members." Charles appeared in the doorway, his face grave. Behind him stood Margaret's assistant, 2 security guards, and a young communications aide. all of whom had clearly heard every word of Camilla's tirade. "Everyone out except family," Charles said calmly. The staff members quickly dispersed, but Kate could see in their faces that the damage had been done. By evening, every palace employee would know about this confrontation. Charles entered the room and closed the door behind him. He looked at each person, in turn. William, who was still standing protectively near Kate. Kate herself, who was trying to wipe away her tears. And finally Camilla, who seemed to be shrinking into herself with each passing second. "I think," Charles said in a voice that was dangerously quiet, "we need to have a conversation. A real conversation this time. Without secrets or hidden agendas." He moved to the center of the room, commanding attention without raising his voice. "Camilla," he said, turning to face his wife, "I have spent the last hour defending this family publicly. I have put my own reputation on the line to protect someone I care about. And now I come back to find you destroying everything I just tried to build." Camilla finally found her voice. "Charles, I'm sorry. I lost my temper. I didn't mean for anyone to hear that." "But you meant every word you said, didn't you?" Charles asked. It wasn't really a question. Camilla's silence was answer enough. Charles nodded slowly. "I thought so." He turned to Kate. "Kate, I need you to understand something. What Camilla said just now, that doesn't represent the views of this family. It doesn't represent my views, and it certainly doesn't represent the truth. But maybe she's right," Kate said quietly. "Maybe I am just a pretty face with a nice smile. Maybe I really don't have what it takes." Quote, "Stop," William said firmly. "Don't you dare let her words get into your head." But Kate continued, her voice getting stronger as she spoke. "Maybe I should step back. Maybe I should let someone else take on the royal duties. Someone who won't cause so much controversy." Charles walked over to where Kate was standing and placed both hands on her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Kate Middleton," he said, using her maiden name deliberately, "do you remember the first time we met?" "Really met? I mean, not just a formal introduction." Kate looked confused by the question, but she nodded. "It was at the hospital opening in Manchester. You asked me about the children's ward project I was working on." "That's right," Charles said. "And do you remember what impressed me about that conversation?" Kate shook her head. "You knew every child's name," Charles said. "Every single one. You knew their medical conditions, their family situations, their hopes and fears. You had spent hours getting to know them, not because cameras were rolling or because it would look good in the papers, but because you genuinely cared." He paused, making sure she was really listening. "That day I called William and told him he had chosen well. I told him you had something that couldn't be taught or inherited. You had heart. Real, genuine compassion for others." Charles turned to address the whole room. "That quality, that ability to truly care about people, is rarer than you might think, especially in our world. It's easy to smile for cameras and shake hands at events. It's much harder to form real connections with people, to make them feel seen and valued." He looked directly at Camilla. "You talk about breeding and background as if they matter more than character. But I've learned something in my years as king. People don't remember your ancestry when you're comforting their dying child. They don't care about your bloodline when you're supporting their charity or bringing attention to their cause." Camilla's face flushed red. "Charles, please don't lecture me about duty. I've served this family faithfully for years." "Have you?" Charles asked pointedly. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been trying to tear down one of its most valuable members." The confrontation was escalating again, but this time Kate felt something different. Instead of cowering from the conflict, she found herself stepping forward. "Stop," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "Just stop, all of you." Everyone turned to look at her, surprised by the authority in her voice. "Camilla," Kate said, turning to face the Queen directly, "I understand that you don't like me. I understand that you think I'm not good enough for this family, but I'm tired of pretending that your opinion is the only one that matters." Kate's voice grew stronger with each word. "You want to talk about sacrifice? Let me tell you about sacrifice. I gave up my privacy, my freedom, my ability to have normal relationships with friends and family. I gave up any hope of a quiet, normal life. I did that because I love William, and because I believe in what this family represents. She took a step closer to Camilla. You want to talk about strength? I've endured years of criticism, years of being judged and found wanting by people like you. I've smiled through it, worked through it, and continued to serve even when it hurt. If that's not strength, I don't know what is. William moved to stand beside Kate, showing his support. And you want to talk about breeding and background? Kate continued. I'm proud of where I come from. I'm proud of my middle-class parents, who taught me the value of hard work and treating everyone with dignity. Those values have served me well in this role. Charles was watching Kate with something that looked like admiration. But here's what I won't do anymore, Kate said, her voice now calm but firm. I won't apologize for being myself. I won't pretend to be something I'm not to make other people comfortable. And I won't let anyone, not the press, not the critics, and certainly not you, make me feel ashamed of who I am. The room was completely silent again. But this time, it wasn't oppressive. It was the silence of people absorbing the weight of Kate's words. Camilla looked as if she had been slapped. I never intended. Yes, you did, Kate interrupted. You intended exactly what you accomplished. You wanted to make me doubt myself, to make me question my place in this family. Well, mission accomplished. I've been doubting myself for years. Kate turned to address Charles and William. But I'm done with that now. I know who I am, and I know what I bring to this role. If that's not enough for some people, then that's their problem, not mine. She looked back at Camilla one more time. I will continue to be respectful to you because you're William's stepmother and Charles's wife, but I will no longer seek your approval or try to change your mind about me. I have better things to do with my energy. With that, Kate walked to the door. But before she left, she turned back to address the room one final time. Charles, thank you for defending me today. It meant more than you know. William, I love you. And I'm sorry you had to witness this ugliness. And Camilla, she paused, considering her words carefully. I hope someday you can find peace with my place in this family. But whether you do or not, I'll still be here, doing my job, and serving the people of this country to the best of my ability. Kate left the room, closing the door quietly behind her. The three people left behind stood in stunned silence. Finally, Charles spoke. William, go after your wife. Make sure she's all right. William nodded and headed for the door, but he paused before leaving. Camilla, he said without turning around. Kate was right about one thing. She doesn't need your approval anymore. But she still has mine, and she always will have Father's. That's what matters. After William left, Charles and Camilla were alone. The weight of everything that had happened settled over them like a thick blanket. Charles, Camilla began, but he held up a hand to stop her. I need to think, he said quietly. I need to process what just happened here. Are you going to ask me to leave? Camilla asked, her voice small and vulnerable for the first time all day. Charles looked at her for a long moment. I don't know, he said honestly. I love you, Camilla. I always have. But I can't have someone in my inner circle who is actively working to undermine another member of my family. I wasn't trying to undermine her, Camilla protested. I was trying to protect the monarchy. By attacking someone who has brought nothing but honor to it? Charles asked. By trying to drive away someone who has dedicated her life to serving it? Charles walked to the window and looked out at the gardens where, even now, he could see Kate and William walking together, talking quietly. Look at them, he said. Look at how he supports her, how they face problems together. That's what a royal partnership should look like. That's what the people need to see from us. He turned back to Camilla. What they saw today was you screaming at a woman who has never done anything to hurt you. What they saw was jealousy and cruelty masquerading as concern for tradition. Camilla sank into a chair, the fight finally going out of her. I've been queen for such a short time, she said quietly. I wanted to prove that I deserved this position. I wanted to show that I understood what was best for the family. And instead you've shown that you're threatened by someone who poses no threat to you, Charles said. Kate has never tried to upstage you or diminish your role. She's been nothing but respectful and supportive. I know, Camilla whispered. I know that now. I spent so many years fighting for acceptance, for recognition. When I saw how easily she seemed to fit in, how naturally people loved her, I felt jealous, Charles finished. You felt jealous. Camilla nodded, tears finally starting to fall. I felt like everything I had worked for, everything I had suffered for, didn't matter because someone else could just walk in and be perfect without even trying. Charles sat down across from her. Camilla, Kate's journey hasn't been easy either. She's faced years of criticism, years of having every move scrutinized. The difference is that she's handled it with grace, while you've let it turn you bitter. What do I do now? Camilla asked. How do I fix this? Charles was quiet for a long time. I don't know if you can fix it, he said finally. The things you said to her, the way you made her feel, that can't be undone with a simple apology. But I can try? You can try. Charles agreed. But it has to be genuine. It has to come from a real understanding of what you did wrong. Not just regret that you got caught. Outside in the gardens, Kate and William had found a quiet bench beneath an old oak tree. The afternoon sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawns. I'm proud of you, William said, taking Kate's hand. The way you stood up for yourself in there, that was incredible. Kate leaned against his shoulder. I don't know where it came from, she admitted. I've been letting people make me feel small for so long that I'd forgotten I don't have to accept that. You never have to accept that, William said firmly. You're my wife. You're the mother of my children. And someday, you'll be queen. Anyone who has a problem with that can deal with me. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the palace staff go about their evening duties in the distance. Do you think she'll ever change her mind about me? Kate asked. William considered the question. I don't know, he said honestly. But I know that it doesn't matter anymore. You don't need her approval to be who you are. Kate smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. You're right. And you know what? I'm actually looking forward to tomorrow. For the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the future instead of worried about it. As they walked back toward the palace, Kate realized something important had changed. Camilla's screams had indeed faded into silence. But it wasn't the silence of defeat or resignation. It was the silence of peace, of a woman who finally knew her own worth and wasn't afraid to stand up for it. The palace lights began to twinkle in the gathering dusk, and Kate Middleton, future Queen of England, walked toward her home, with her head held high and her heart at peace. She had survived the storm, and she had emerged stronger than ever. Behind them, in the palace windows, Charles watched them go and smiled. The monarchy would not just survive this crisis. It would thrive because of the strength and character of people like Kate, and that was exactly as it should be. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of possibility, hope, and the quiet confidence of a woman who had finally found her voice and was never going to let anyone take it away again.